Welcome one and all. Let's take a look at demystifying ln of e to the x and why does that equal to x. Please remember that my channel is for math lovers and enthusiasts. So let's take a look. I'm going to begin by doing a graph. So this is the standard x-axis along the horizontal and y along the vertical. And that red curve represents e to the x. That's just a basic function now. You can stick a value into it, like x sub 0, and then it gives an output, and that output would be called e to the x sub 0. Perhaps you know that the number e is about 2.718 roughly. The specific value for our purposes is not really important. What is essential, though, is to understand that you take an input from the horizontal axis, you feed it through the function, and it gives an output along the vertical axis. That output is named e to the x sub 0. Let's ask ourselves this question. Why do we always take inputs from the horizontal axis and usually put outputs on the vertical? There's really no reason for that. It's simply perhaps psychological. It's easier that way, but it doesn't have to be that way. This is what I mean. Take a look. I'm going to move the input label, and I'm going to put that as the label on the vertical, and I'm going to put the output as the label on the horizontal. So we're just kind of slightly breaking the traditional way of reading graphs. We can do that. It's our world after all. We can do anything we like. From this perspective now, it's already a little bit different. The inputs would be coming from the vertical axis, which means that function e to the x would not be e to the x from the perspective of feeding values into it from the vertical axis. Instead, it would be called the natural log function, ln of y. Perhaps some of you have seen the natural log function, especially if you're a math enthusiast. It should be somewhat familiar to you in appearance. Now, this does not appear like it until you use your imagination and you think of the inputs as coming from the vertical axis. Then it does look like the basic natural log function. Let's stop here for a second and think about this. So when you look at one graph, if you think of the input as the horizontal and the output of the vertical, it's e to the x. But if you switch the normal way of reading them, then that function is not e to the x anymore, but say ln of y. So you can read a graph both ways, keep that in mind. It also means the following. Again, the input now is coming from the vertical axis. So when I do that, I'm going to reverse the direction of the arrows. And I'm going to take e to the x sub 0. I'm going to plug that into the ln function. And where does that take me? Just trace the direction of the arrows. So now again, let me emphasize this point. You're plugging e to the x sub 0 into the ln function from the perspective of going from the vertical back to the horizontal. And you see that it takes you back to x sub 0, which was the original input in the first place. What does that tell us? That tells us that ln of e to the x sub 0 is just the value of the exponent. Kind of magical, I think. What we're going to do now is take this one step further. Let me take this setup. So again, in this setup, the input is the vertical, output horizontal. And what I'm going to do is rotate it. I can do anything that I like. Just remember, it's our world. So now you see the input is on the horizontal. Do you see that? But that doesn't look like the pictures you have seen of the basic ln function. So that means we have to do one more transformation. Take a look. The next transformation, perhaps you can guess it, is to rotate it. Look. And when you rotate it, it looks like that, which is exactly the standard ln function. So now if you think about this, the input is on the horizontal, output on the vertical, the traditional way. So you would take e to the x sub 0 from the horizontal, you would feed it into the natural log function and get x sub 0 out on the vertical. That is it for this one. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this has given you some unique graphical insights. Like and subscribe, and I'll check you out in another video.